Welcome to Life on Earth. Welcome to Life on Earth.
Well, hello, you good people. Welcome to Life on Earth with Robert and Amy Nasir.
Hello.
Well, it's Life on Earth, so it's really starring you. We are glad you are here, and Equal to Reality and the unsigned 32-bit individualist are already in the chat, which is good because I want to hear from you in the chat. I'll say right off the bat, because I always say this too late. We want to hear from you. We want your questions. We want your comments. But hey, if you can do a super chat, support ARCUK, we need to see that happen. Because last time we didn't get any until, 25 minutes into the show. And I said, oh my gosh, I haven't asked for a super chat and there haven't been any. And then all of a sudden we got a bunch and you guys are really cool. So, if you've got a couple dollars, you want to share it with the ARCUK, let's do that a little bit earlier this time. And I won't be sweating because, Amy has to sit next to me sweating, make that happen. It is time. It is time for the super chats, but it's time for time. It's time to talk about time. That's right. Life on Earth is a show about life on Earth. Ayn Rand described her philosophy in her speech at West Point in 1974 as, formally she calls it objectivism. Informally, she said, I call it a philosophy for living on Earth. Well, time is one of those things which, if you want to live on Earth, it is something you want to be a master of. You want to be a master of time. So talking about it is important. Thinking about it is important. Now, you may already have a concept in your mind of what time is and how best to manage it and what your goals are and what you want to do with your time on Earth. Talking about it is always a good thing. Interesting thing came out of Jean Moroney's talk on central purpose. She said it, now this was not OCON 2022, but the previous one in Austin, Texas. She said, you need to know what your central purpose is. You need to know what your driving force is in your productive career. But she said that central purpose is something you need to revisit periodically. Every 10 or 15 years, you may find your central purpose changing. Now, for some objectivists, and a little bit for me, that was a bomb drop, because how many of us have thought, well, isn't it kind of like Howard Roark, who had one central purpose his whole life, architecture, never changed, and he knew it right from the beginning. But as Jean pointed out, that's not true for most of us. We need to re-examine these things. Likewise with time management, with your daily routines, with what you're doing about time and how you're thinking about time. I believe we need to periodically revisit that topic. It changes throughout life. It changes with our central purpose. So let's talk about time. Speaking of Jean Moroney, great essay on her website. And this is on the free side. You don't need to be a member of Thinking Directions, although you should be in the Thinking Lab. But just to get you started, one of her free essays, How to Take Advantage of Low Quality Time. This is great. If you heard her on the Yarn Brook show last week talking about happiness, you know how good Jean is on clarity of goals and achieving your values in order to achieve happiness. But in her essay, How to Take Advantage of Low Quality Time, we'll talk about what that means. She says, on perfectionism, if you have a problem with perfectionism, you need to develop a mantra for yourself. Pick one, or it doesn't matter which one, or right now, good is better than best. I love this. This is what I call some but any. I've talked about it on the show. It's a roadblock for some of us who are a little over intellectual. We get in a situation where we don't know the exact right thing to do next, or there are two different things we need to do equally important. And because there's nothing out there saying, do this first, we get stuck, we get stalled. It's the some but any idea. Objectivists, I shouldn't say objectivists, some of us, people like me, sometimes have a problem with that. The idea that the age of majority is 18, that's when you can vote, except you can't drink until you're 21. And isn't it arbitrary? And should there even be one? Because there's no sign out there in reality that says, well, it should be 18, it should be 21. Well, it has to be something, some but any. Likewise, if you have a problem with perfectionism, Jean Moroney says, develop that mantra for yourself. Pick one, or whatever mantra works for you. It doesn't matter which one, or right now, good is better than best. I call it a coin flip. And you're not flipping a coin because it doesn't matter. You're flipping a coin just to make the choice objective. and get in the habit of thinking a coin flip, that wasn't arbitrary, and I'm going to do it because the coin flip matters. Anyway, let me move on because we're going to say a few things about time planning before we get into the essence of time. Gene Moroney also says on daily planning, if in hindsight you feel like you make poor decisions when you just do something good, you may not be doing enough daily planning. Are you planning your day, or are you just carrying a to-do list around in your head? She says on commitment, a good way to bolster your commitment to a chosen task is use a decision log. Again, she's talking about writing things down. Gene Moroney has great methods for clarifying both your values and the motivation that should arise from those values. She will get you on track. If you look at the show notes, what show notes? If you go to facebook.com/Robert Nasir, you'll find the show notes for this episode. We're going to talk about a lot. The show notes are this long, and all of them are golden, good stuff, free for you to click on and find that stuff, including Gene Moroney's website. There's also a link in there to her freebie, her startup kit that gets you into her processes. Good stuff, even if you never sign up for any of her very worthwhile, but cost money, thinking labs or any of the other courses that she offers. So much good free content. If you've never done a values clarification exercise before, it almost doesn't matter which one you do as long as you do one. And again, this is something you're going to revisit more than once in your life. So I told you I'm going to do a book report on this book, Designing Your Life. If you need to do a values clarification exercise, this book will do that for you. The only reason I haven't done the review yet, it turns out the book is almost too good or almost too detailed. It's really a challenge to come up with a review of a book where everything is meat.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Oh, that's great.
It's tough. For example, this book, Tim Ferriss's The 4-Hour Workweek. This book is easy to review because although there's a ton of content in it, a lot of it is not, it's optional. So for example, the whole back set of the book is the best of the blog. There's 100 pages that's just the best of the blog. It's tips and tricks, it's wisdom, it's things that he wrote about on his weblog or from guests that he had on his show. And it's all good stuff, but it's not part of the central thesis of building a highly efficient, he calls it a 4-hour work week. It's not literally 4 hours. It could be, but nobody actually would practice it that way. But from the 4-hour work week by Tim Ferriss, doing less is not laziness. Working smart is smart. One of the great lessons in here is what we fear doing is usually what we most need to do. If you're familiar with time management, you know the expression, eat the frog. And that refers to, if you've got a long task list for the day, a long list of things you need to do, and one of the things on the list is eat a live frog, first thing in the morning, you should eat the frog. Because the whole rest of your day will be good after that. Nothing will be worse. But also you'll knock out that hardest task. So when Tim Ferriss says, usually what we fear doing is what we most need to do. I believe Ellen Kenner says the same thing. Whatever it is on your task list that you feel the most resistance to doing, that's a great place to start. You knock that out, and the rest of the list seems easier, but also you've got the pride of that big accomplishment. I like this book, but again, it's almost like when we did our episode on aphorisms, in that it's 1,000 good ideas without necessarily a unifying structure or theme. Good stuff.
Well, luckily we have objectivism, and we can actually integrate a lot of information in a way that is helpful to us, and
Right.
Even if it's thrown at us kind of piecemeal.
Which we will do. Steve Jobs said, for the past 33 years, I have looked in the mirror every morning and asked myself, if today were the last day of my life, would I want to do what I am about to do today? And whenever the answer has been no for too many days in a row, I know I need to change something. Almost everything, all external expectations, all pride, all fear of embarrassment or failure, these things just fall away in the face of death, leaving only what is truly important. Remembering that you are going to die is the best way I know to avoid the trap of thinking you have something to lose. Steve Jobs. Now, of course, Steve Jobs passed away too early, but it's not the tragedy it could have been, because we know that is exactly how he lived. You know, memento mori, remember that someday you are going to die. You know, we call that the rocking chair test.
Mhm.
You know, if you get to the point where you're old and frail and hardly able to do much, but you can sit in your rocking chair on your porch and enjoy the nice weather and think about your life. When you're sitting in your rocking chair, what are you going to be proud of, be happy about, content with?
Mhm.
And what are you going to regret? What are you going to miss? What are you going to think, oh my gosh, I never did this thing that was important to me, whether it was start a business or go to Paris or take my kids to Disneyland or whatever that thing is. That's the rocking chair test. Again, when Steve Jobs says, I look in the mirror every morning and ask myself if today were the last day of my life. Well, he got to do that. One more from the business world here, because I was turned on to this by several objectivists. And then we'll get into the theory behind all of this. But Deep Work, Cal Newport's book, Deep Work, Rules for Focused Success in a Distracted World. Another book with a ton of content in it, but in this case, there's 4 rules. And I'll just read off the rules real quick here. And then you'll know everything you need to know about Cal Newport and Deep Work.
Sure.
Kidding, of course.
Except for the application.
Well, there is that.
Yeah, there's that.
Rule number 1 is work deeply. Well, that was easy. You got a book called Deep Work, and rule number 1 is work deeply. Well, do that and you're done. Good. Apparently, there are 4 styles of working deeply. There's the monastic style. See if this is you, if this resonates, if this is what it takes for you to get deep, long, concentrated, intense work done over a period of several hours. Monastic. That's the isolation style. You cloister away, you eliminate all distractions, you don't think about or try to do anything, you don't take any breaks unless they're absolutely necessary, the monastic style. Number 2, bimodal, in which you prioritize the deep work. You don't cut everything else off, but you spend the bulk of your time on deep work. You give it most of your attention. There's the rhythmic method of achieving deep work. Now, this was interesting to me because you see, we've got the hourglasses here. We'll turn a few of these over because this is how you're going to make sure you budget your time accordingly. If you don't have an hourglass, get a timer. If you don't have a timer, get a timer or an hourglass. I recently got this time block here. How do you like that? Why would you have a block with all these different times on it and weird ones like 25 minutes? And there's 2 answers to that. The rhythmic method is also called time blocking. You've probably heard of this. You make a to-do list, but you also assign an amount of time you're going to put into each item. There's something called the Pomodoro Technique. Pomodoro meaning tomato in Italian. And it was originally written about by a guy who had one of those kitchen timers in the shape of a tomato. And it's one of the kind you would twist it so you can set however many minutes you want. He would set it for 25 minutes. So you see this one has a 25-minute timer. If I turn it up so the 25-minute timer is up, it's going to beep in 25 minutes. And the Pomodoro Technique is, if you've got a task you're working on, give yourself 25 minutes to work on it.
Mm-hmm.
After 25 minutes, take a 5-minute break. And then if you need another time block of 25 minutes, set your timer again.
I did that today, actually. It was 10 minutes.
Excellent.
But instead of what I like to do with those sorts of time blocks is just to motivate myself, because once I'm actually involved in the project, that's when the motivation kicks in, because I can see what it is that I'm doing. I can see the motivation for what it is I'm doing. and the meaning of it and the value of it. So yeah, it takes me a little while for that to warm up.
Excellent. Now, and real quick here, the fourth method is journalistic, or using routines. If you've heard our show on Adam Grant, and no, it wasn't Adam Grant. I'm sorry, it was James Clear on Atomic Habits. What did Adam Grant write? Why am I mixing those two up? Anyway, read the book Atomic Habits and you'll understand the power of habits and routines, which is the fourth method, if that's more your style rather than time blocking or monastic cloistering yourself away. But that's rule number one, is work deeply. Rule number two, embrace boredom. Now, Cal Newport describes embracing boredom as productive meditation, which just means think about complex problems. I try to do this at night. If you go to bed thinking about a complex problem, you'll sometimes wake up in the morning having figured it out. Cal Newport encourages you to do that with any kind of slow time, downtime, the kind of time that, in talking about Gene Moroney, we described as low quality time. Rule number three. Now, this one I want to hear your feedback on. Rule number three, Cal Newport, he's famous for this one. Rule number three is quit social media.
Well, that goes along with number two.
What's that? Embrace boredom?
Mm-hmm.
Well, that's true. A lot of times when we're bored, we go to social media instead of using that time to
constantly wanting to spectate and look outwardly instead of being alone with ourselves. Yeah.
Yeah. And my answer to that is you can have my social media when you pry it from my cold, dead typing fingers.
Well, it's except that it's always nice I get reports every week on my social media usage. And whenever I see that it's down, I kind of pat myself on the back because that means I was actually doing something that was a little bit more worthwhile than,
Right. So I want your feedback on this one. And fortunately, our producer just put up a poll. Do you think social media is good for you?
I'm going to say yes, but that's a very contextual question. Depends on what else you have going on, like any other value. But
yep.
But I think that if you use it too much, it becomes compulsive, and you start feeling like you've lost an arm if you put your phone down. Then you may want to rethink, okay, this is dragging me into places I don't want to be.
Yes. I asked a question once online. Here's a question for you. This one's open-ended. If Facebook wasn't free, how much would you pay for it?
$9.99 a month.
And I would pay, I don't know. It would depend a lot. If it was too expensive, then a lot of the people I would want to reach wouldn't be there. But assuming that I could still do with Facebook what I do with it now, I would be willing to pay hundreds of dollars a year for it. Don't tell Mark Z that, because we don't want him getting ideas. But I have asked people about that, and they have said, I would never pay for Facebook. And the amazing thing is how many of those same people spend, I don't know how much time online, let's say lots, usually posting dank memes and other things that don't make them happy. It's the strangest thing.
I posted a whole bunch of fun memes this morning.
Yeah.
If anyone's friends with me, you'll go to my wall, and a lot of very, very funny memes.
So my reaction to Cal Newport when he says quit social media is no. When I encountered this, I posted online. I said, sometimes I'm simply amazed, bedazzled, and grateful how the internet in general, and Facebook in particular, has enabled me to discover like minds and kindred spirits, build and maintain relationships, learn and spread powerful ideas, plan, schedule, facilitate events. The rock and roll picnic's coming up in 1 month. Publicize and stream my podcasts and other activities. Keep friends and family connected and up to date. And find all manner of amusement, entertainment, inspiration Yes, social networks can be a distraction and a time sink. And so they must be used mindfully, intentionally. That just means rationally. But wow, what an enormous value. And the only cost to me is the time and energy I put into it. So yes, that's what I would say. Now, not everybody can do that. And I've even been through periods where I've thought, oh man, I'm spending too much time on this. I need to spend less time on this. So I understand that perspective. But fortunately, in our poll here, we have 83% saying, yeah, social media is good for you.
Yeah, but going through these lists and everything from all of these different resources and authors, and this is some really excellent information if you want to turn your life around.
Well, I'm going
probably,
and I'm going to wrap it up. Actually, I need to wrap up Cal Newport real quick here, because he also says I have to quit social media, rule number 4, which is drain the shallows. And again, we get into this idea of low value time. Schedule every minute, quantify the depth of your daily activity. In other words, the things that aren't important. Maybe you've heard of the 80-20 rule or the Pareto principle. The 80-20 rule says that 80% of your returns, your profits, your gains, your achievements, 80% of your results will come from 20% of your work. And you can look it up if that seems kind of sketchy to you.
yeah.
But I think most of us, if you think about it, 20% of your work ends up being the stuff that really gets the most done or gets the most results. And a lot of it is make work stuff where you don't see any results or much result. You see some, it's stuff that's got to be done.
Right. Organizational things.
But it's not high profit.
No.
The gains aren't that great.
Well, it's good in terms of, organizing it for the future if you need it later, things like that.
Yes.
Yeah.
Well, you can do more than that with these low gain, but 80% of your time events. So again, Cal Newport says, drain the shallows. That's his way of describing that. He says, schedule every minute, quantify the depth of every activity. How deep does it go into achieving your mission? Ask your boss, if you have a boss, if you're in that environment, ask your boss for a shallow work budget. How much time do you want me to spend on these things that aren't as important? And he also says, finish your work by 5:30 and become hard to reach. So don't make it easy for people to stretch your day out with work that isn't that important. Now, my approach to the Pareto principle is similar, but also if you've got a lot of stuff like that at your job or whatever it is that is your central activity, a lot of that work can often be condensed and consolidated. You can work smarter. You can turn it into less work. Once you've identified that this has got to be done, but it's not that important, you can postpone a lot of that work and concentrate on that 20% that gives you the big results. Answer the ads that you know are ripe, or the job leads, if you're still job hunting, that you know are going to get you more of what you want. Do the tasks that get the most results. You can, postpone those lower value items. You can farm stuff out. You can actually trust to a third party things or delegate to other people within the organization. Something that objectivists aren't always good at. We talked about that. I hate delegating because I know if I do it, it'll get done the way I want it to get done. And that's the worst. That's just bad, Robert, bad.
Well, yeah. I mean, you've got to give other people the opportunity to shine. That's what I say.
And even if they're not going to shine, if it's not important, if it's not deep work, if it's not part of that 20% that's going to give you those 80% returns, it's not that big a deal if somebody else does it to their standard, which isn't quite your standard.
Right.
At some point, you've got to say, I've got to put my time and energy where the money is. It's why you get a guy like Tim Ferriss who comes up with a 4-hour work week, is because he's not going to waste his time on unimportant things. It's one of the lessons you're going to get if you read this book is your time is valuable. And it's more valuable than it is if you're not doing this prioritization, you could make your time more valuable. And that gets me into what I really want to talk about.
Yep, as Kathleen, who sent us a £2 super chat. Thank you, Kathleen. She says, I'll pay you to do this stuff. It's that important.
Darn right. Yeah, that's why I say sometimes you can delegate, but even farm it out. Pay somebody else to do the unimportant stuff. Exactly right. Because you can use that time to actually make more money. It sounds strange if you've never put yourself in that position before. And there's a lot of independent entrepreneurial ideas here, which again, I'm still working on as I work my way through designing your life, because a lot of success-oriented folks, coaches, self-help, they're very big on saying, well, ultimately you got to start your own business and you've got to and then hire somebody to run that business and walk away from it. I love the entrepreneurial spirit, but not everybody has that temperament. So even if that's not you, yeah, get used to farming stuff out, get used to delegating. Yeah, Jeff Bannister is also in for $4 there. Thank you for the support for the ARCUK.
Thank you, Jeff.
Very much appreciated. We've got a super chat earlier from Kathleen who says, so much good content here on ARCUK. Love it. I could not agree more wholeheartedly, and I appreciate you pointing that out. And Anthony Monahan with €4.99, which used to be like twice what $1 was worth. Somehow they've come to almost parity, I think, with the euro. Anyway, very generous anyway. And the biggest super chat so far of the day says, what are your views on Elon Musk's evolving political views? Whole different topic, which I do want to answer that question. The short answer is that I know very little about Elon Musk's views. It's been interesting watching him play the political outsider and yet engaging. It's the kind of guy where you think, if I had all the money in the world, here are things I would do. And then nobody ever does those things. And you're like, why do people bother to be rich? They never do the kinds of things where I think if I was rich, I would do blah, 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 blah. Well,
Yeah,
Elon Musk does.
Yeah. And I did hear on some kind of Facebook thing that kind of flashed across my eyes today about Elon Musk talking about, basically praising the idea of altruism in some form or another, which isn't, since altruism is the predominant moral code in our culture, and I'm not surprised. I would be surprised if he wasn't, I would be surprised if he never mentioned it. If he never tried to validate his actions that way, I'd be surprised, so because so many people do.
I have not seen a lot of altruism. I haven't seen a lot of it. I'm not surprised if something he said today falls into that. He's very smart, but he's not a philosopher. So yes, I'm not that surprised. I like a lot of what he's done. I like a lot of what he's said. Unfortunately, if he pulls out of the Twitter deal, I stand to lose a substantial amount of money. But other than that, and the fact that there's been a certain amount of cronyism, it was the only way for him to get into electric cars and space travel, which is debatable. Again, maybe there was a way to do that without. It's complicated. We may get into it some more before the end of the show if we have time, but thank you for the question. Also, scrolling back to the beginning of the chat, that was not the biggest super chat, because for £5 equal to reality was in, and he said right at the beginning, oh, go on. And I can only imagine how that was meant. I will simply say thank you very much for the
Alex.
Super chat, and very much appreciated. So we jump from, yes, you need to be doing these things, either these things or these things or Cal Newport's things. You need a process for managing your time, but why? Why does it matter that much? I have spent so much of my life before I went to paper planners and day timers and pens, carrying it around in my head, everything, my to-do lists, my goals, my intentions. And I was able to do that. I was reasonably successful, depending on how you define your terms. And yet, once I changed to writing things down and doing things in a methodical way, in other words, doing things rationally, everything got better. You need one of these methods or more than one of these methods because time is finite. Does that even make sense? Time is finite? Because time isn't a thing. Time is the measure of change, of things happening. I've got a link in the show notes to a lecture by objectivists on what time really is. I've also got a link to a lecture on the TED Talks of what time is. It's a little different perspective, but the bottom line is time is simply the measure of change, of things happening.
Yeah, or it's a relationship among motions in the universe, things that are moving in the universe.
Yes, I know Harry Binswanger especially emphasizes the motion aspect of that.
Yeah. I mean, Leonard Peikoff says time is a measurement of motion. It's a type of relationship. And the thing that I most like actually about Harry's clip that you put in the show notes is that he said, if there was only one thing moving in the universe, there would be no time because there would be no relationship among those things that are moving. So, and it's just an interesting little concept there.
Yes. Sorry. I'm just looking at the chat there, and Christopher says that Musk is going to vote Republican, but I say, who knows? Yeah, again, I guess it's better to speculate than never, but it's hard to say at this point. And Kathleen dropped her Tesla investment. Again, I haven't invested directly in Musk. I just invested in Twitter. I shouldn't even talk about my investments. I can tell you, if you follow my investment advice, I can make you a millionaire. The only catch is you have to start out with $2 million. So that tells you something about what kind of investor I am. But yes, time is the measure of change, of things happening. Now, here's the thing. If time really is the measure of things happening, then there's a way to make more time. Actually,
by making more things in motion?
By making more things happen. Exactly right. Actually, it's in two parts, because if you use your time effectively, efficiently, productively, intentionally, if you guard your time zealously, as all of these writers will tell you to do not let people waste your time. Do not let yourself waste your time. Benjamin Franklin said, "Dost thou love life? Then do not waste time, for that is the stuff that life is made of." That's how you make time. Use your time actively, efficiently, productively, intentionally. In other words, rationally. And the second is, and this is even more fundamentally, even though it'll probably sound a little woo to an objectivist audience, be more focused, more aware, more present while things are happening. Now, fortunately, that can also make you more productive. It's easier to achieve a flow state, for example, with that level of concentration, or what Cal Newport would call deep work. But also, you will get more out of your moments. There's a poem, a long post that goes around, the author is unknown, called "To Realize the Value of Time." It starts out, "To realize the value of 1 year, ask a student who failed his final exam. To realize the value of 1 month, ask a mother who's given birth to a premature baby. To realize the value of 1 hour, ask 2 lovers who are waiting to meet. To realize the value of just 1 minute, ask the person who missed his train or airplane. To realize the value of 1 second, ask a person who just survived an accident. To realize the value of a millisecond, talk to a person who won the silver medal in the Olympics." Time isn't subjective, but it's contextual. 5 minutes spent on hold with the IRS is a long amount of time. 5 minutes with your lover in the bedroom is a relatively short amount of time. There's a link in the show notes. Most of you will already know it, to the poem "If" by Rudyard Kipling. I'm not going to read the whole thing, but the very end of the poem, Kipling writes, "If you can wow, tongue-tied, been reading the end of a poem, that's not good. If you can fill the unforgiving minute with 60 seconds worth of distance run, yours is the earth and everything that's in it, and which is more, you'll be a man, my son. I guess it wouldn't rhyme if he said, you'll be a woman, my daughter. I have a daughter, not a son. So if you can fill the unforgiving minute with 60 seconds worth of distance run, yours is the earth and everything that's in it, and which is more, you'll be a man, my son. Now, it's not about how productive you were in that minute. It's about being as productive as you can. You know, life is essentially a race with yourself, the best version of yourself. We are all time travelers. We are all time travelers, but it's forward only and at a fixed rate of 3,600 seconds per hour. A fixed rate of 3,600 seconds per hour. How much would you pay? We talked about how much would you pay for Facebook if it wasn't free? Answer this. How much would you pay for an extra minute or an extra hour each day? How much would you pay for time if time wasn't free? And do you ever catch yourself treating time like it's free, like it's worth what you paid for it? Last time we had this discussion, I found a Chinese proverb that says, an inch of time is an inch of gold, but you can't buy that inch of time with an inch of gold. I guess I like Ben Franklin's version of that better. Dost thou love life? Then do not squander time, for that is the stuff that life is made of. Mm-hmm. So you're keeping a better eye on the chat there. Am I missing things here?
No, I was doing a little research about Elon Musk. And
we're getting some answers there to the earlier question about that.
Well, maybe not the earlier question, but
what the hell is that boy up to?
Well, he said recently that the book What We Owe the Future by William McCaskill, who proposes long-termism, basically long-term altruism,
yep.
Save the children and the children's children, ad infinitum. He says that it's a close match to his philosophy, he said. He found it to be very close to his philosophy, which he defines as, quote, questioning reality and the meaning of life.
Okay. I'm all for questioning reality and the meaning of life.
Which just really is not quite a philosophy. It is philosophy. But
it's philosophical, but it's not a philosophic system.
Yeah. So, but anyway, this book, What We Owe the Future, it says we must ensure that civilization would rebound if it collapsed, counter the end of moral progress, and prepare for a planet where the smartest beings are digital, not human. I'm not entirely sure what he's talking about that, but
I can't begin to imagine.
He says it's not enough to reverse climate change or avert the next pandemic, that we need to prepare for all of the potential catastrophes in the future that might happen. How nice.
Okay.
So anyway,
that's a conversation that we need to have at some point.
Yes.
Because there's something to it. When people feel this need to live for a purpose larger than themselves, it's not always complete otherism or altruism or mysticism. It's just that they don't know how to properly address broad contexts. It's an interesting thing. Those of us with children have a sense. Oh, see, there's the 25-minute timer going off, the Pomodoro timer. Again, I love the idea of a 25-minute timer. I don't have a 25-minute hourglass. I've got a 30-minute. So you have to kind of catch it 5 minutes before the end there. In order to take the 5-minute break that goes with your 25-minute work time. So Pomodoro Technique, look that up. Follow the link. It's in the show notes. But yes, this idea of living a life larger than yourself or long-termism, worrying about the long term well after you're gone. Those of us with children have a sense that we actually kind of care what happens after we're gone. Well, isn't that contradictory? You're not going to be here. Why would you care? And the answer is, well, I can't properly care about my child who will outlive me without having some sense that once I'm gone, I also want her to enjoy her life. Not that I'm going to be around for it, but I can't enjoy, call it the next 40 years with her if I don't in some way care about her next 70 years. So again, it's not an issue of self-sacrifice or altruism or mysticism to say, on some level, I do care what happens after I'm gone, not because I'll be there, but just because it affects what I do right now with people who will be there. But it's more than that. It's I think the love of life, the passion for human progress and human excellence, this amazing planet that we live on and do amazing things with. I don't think you can think of that in such a way that if the day after I die, I could somehow make $1 zillion by setting off a nuclear bomb that's going to go off after I die and blow up the world. Even if, by some convoluted logic that became a possible thing, I wouldn't want it. I love the world too much to think on my deathbed, all this ends tomorrow. And I don't have a real sense of that I'm attached to what happens after I'm dead. I'm not going to be around. But there is a persistence of values there, because the value of the earth after I'm gone is connected to everything and everyone who's here right now while I'm here. So again, I don't think that Musk is necessarily being irrational by having some admiration for a book that talks about long-termism, even if I would never think of it in those terms.
Yeah, I mean,
There's
I'd
something
have to
there.
understand a little bit about McCaskill and what he's talking about.
Yeah, there's something there.
But going back to our questioner, thank you very much for the super chat.
Yeah, we have another super chat. Kathleen says, wonderful words, Robert. So you're going to make me read compliments to myself. Wonderful words, Robert and Amy. I thank you. Thank you, Kathleen. That is very kind.
But Anthony, I mean, in terms of views on Elon Musk's evolving political views, you have to understand where he's coming from morally. And I think that book probably has a lot to say about it. I mean, I think that Elon Musk he has a lot of implicit ideas that he's very efficacious. He's very confident. He thinks that he can really solve just about anything, and he has solved a lot, and he has done a lot of wonderful things.
Yeah.
But I'm sure that he doesn't quite understand the idea of altruism and why altruism is not a good morality.
Well, but to be clear, the reason why I enjoy Elon Musk's achievements and I don't mind his antics is that he is fundamentally and primarily a businessman. He's not a politician, like, say, our last businessman president. And he's not a philanthropist. I might, for example, judge Bill Gates on what he does and says more. Elon Musk isn't either of those things. He's just some guy. Now, he happens to be a very rich guy. He might be the richest guy in the world right now. That goes back and forth, depending on the price of oil and other things. But yeah, to me, he's just some guy. He's not that important. And so I can enjoy him. If he ever enters politics, or if he ever, really leverages his money in the name of politics. And I know if you're following climate and electric vehicles, you probably think, well, he is important in the culture war and the politics. He's really not. He's not that important. So it's easy for me to enjoy what he does. That may change. My opinion may evolve over time.
Yeah.
And I certainly agree with what Alex Epstein has to say.
Yeah.
And I don't admire the cronyism. I think the electric vehicles is a much more mixed point than people realize. We have friends who are engineers, in this case with the Ford Motor Company, And the engineering behind the electric vehicles that Ford Motor Company is producing right now is amazing.
And I want to thank the coal industry for electric vehicles.
Well, yeah, I mean, you
Thank you,
need
coal
coal to
industry.
power electric vehicles. And that's not a
Yeah.
contradiction. I know
Yeah.
people like to put up cartoons of a coal power plant is powering the electric
Yeah.
vehicles, which misses the point entirely. If you're putting up those kinds of memes, you should look up why the meme is irrational and isn't convincing anybody beyond getting a chuckle out of your friends. It actually doesn't make any sense. That would be like saying that we shouldn't use batteries. We should plug everything into the wall, or we shouldn't plug anything into the wall. We should be using batteries for everything. We should have a little gasoline engine inside a transistor radio. It may well be that at some point it's not going to make any sense to have a
Yeah.
gasoline engine in a vehicle because electricity will be more efficient, not to save the planet, but
Right.
just because it makes sense, just because it makes more sense than, imagine if I have a printer over in the corner here in the studio. Imagine if I said, I'm not going to plug that printer into the wall anymore. I'm going to have a little gasoline engine, a little generator just for the printer. And the printer runs on gas. You would say, well, that's stupid. It may well get to the point where cars, yeah, we can run them on gas, but it doesn't make any sense to anymore. We're not as far off from that as some people think. Now, it's a mistake. It's a waste of resources. And back to our theme for the day, it's a waste of time to force that issue,
Yeah.
to regulate that issue, to pull the carbon credit scheme, to do anything to
Right.
force the hand of the engineers and the auto companies. And I absolutely agree with Alex on that.
Right.
I just caution people against being simplistic and using that as a way to hit Elon Musk over the head with a hammer. He deserves some of it. I don't deny that.
Yeah.
But
So
I need to get back to time because
time's
time is
running out.
flowing here, man.
It's
It's
running
like
out.
13 minutes to the
I
top of the
just
hour.
want to give a shout out to our friend Paul, who is in the chat right now.
Yeah, speaking of engineers,
Who has been a supporter of us, a Patreon of Robert and Amy Nasir at robertnasir.com.
that's right. What if you
Um,
want to give money to us?
Yeah, if you want to, if you want
robertnasir.com.
to give both to ARCUK and us,
Well, yeah, you got
or
it.
if you just have given enough to ARCUK and you're like, I would like to support Robert and
knows I
Amy
have.
directly. You can go to robertnasir.com and you can find some links for Patreon and PayPal, and certainly would appreciate it. So Paul says, I often think that I have an internal clock that gives me a subjective feeling for the passage of time. As I get older, that clock slows down, which means that time seems to go by faster. Yes. So a couple of ideas in there. Yes, I do
Yes.
also feel like there is some truth to the idea of feeling like you have an internal clock. Unless you're completely insulated from the outside world with no windows and you're cut off from time, eventually you'll probably lose that sense of time passing, but and what time it might be. But
It certainly changes.
yeah, so when you get older, I think that there's so many things that you automatize and things just run on autopilot. And when that happens, I think that time goes by a lot faster, and then all of a sudden it's 5 o'clock.
Well, that's what happens when I don't follow my show notes here, and suddenly it's 10 minutes to the hour. So let me jump forward to the end. Well, not the end, but hold on a second. Sorry, I had to hit the cough button there. I'm going to share with you some notes from my forthcoming book, Values Are Primary, from Chapter 5, Values Under Threat. The book is about values, about pursuing your values, about why values matter and disvalues aren't that important. But sometimes your values are under threat. Sometimes you have to evaluate an Elon Musk and everybody else and figure out, are they for me or against me? And people who have heard our Sunday show, 5 Minutes with Robert and Amy Nasir, know I have a rule for that. And I think you should too. I think you should decide in advance. A number, pick a number. What did I say? Some but any. Just any number, but one that fits you and your thoughts on this. How much of your time are you going to spend pursuing your values? Versus how much of your time are you going to spend guarding against threats to your values? Now, my numbers are 97.3. I've always said 97% of your time should be focused on the positive, on values, on living your life, on making things happen, creating and cooperating and producing and even competing to make things happen. And 3% of your life, 97.3, 3% of your life should be spent protecting yourself from threats, guarding against disvalues, putting up alarms, or arranging to have insurance, or hiding things away, or putting things into vaults, or working with the police, supporting organizations that are fighting the things that you believe need to be fought. Whatever it is applies to threats to your values. Determine your own numbers. They won't necessarily be 97.3. But determine those numbers. Write them down somewhere, or know in your head what they are in advance. And if you find yourself spending too much time on the problems of the day, and then the next day getting back into it, and then the next day getting back into it, if you're spending more time worrying about what's wrong than celebrating and pursuing what is right, figure out what your numbers are. Decide what your ratio of designing and creating and producing and celebrating and singing and dancing and playing and romancing and living your life versus the time you're going to spend fighting the anti-life. Figure out your numbers and stick to them, lest you waste time.
So the question is, can you get value out of time? And I could make a case that you can, if you plan your days and weeks and months in a way that will promote anticipation for the events that are coming up, and that you also can plan contemplation after the events are finished. So yeah, this is one of my thoughts for today, which is time is really fun. Think back when you might think, oh, as an adult, oh, I don't have enough of it, blah, 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 complain. But think back when you were a child and you were first learning time, when you first got your first watch.
Yeah.
I mean, if you did, if you're not, if you weren't born to say that.
The concept was mind blowing until you got used to it. It was just amazing.
Yeah, my first watch was a Mickey Mouse watch, and his little arm was a little
Too cool.
thing, and it was so happy and so wonderful. And then I got this one clock next to my bed, which was an old thing that kind of hummed. And it was sort of like a alarm clock.
Did it have light up numbers or flip numbers?
The flip numbers.
Flip numbers, flip clock.
And I just absolutely loved it.
Every minute would be like flip.
Yeah. And so when the alarm went off, I taught myself that I needed to have a cold washcloth next to my bed. So I would put one in a Tupperware that was wet, and I would wake up and I would take the cold washcloth out of the Tupperware and put it on my face. Mm-hmm. And that's how I woke up when I was a little girl. But there was all sorts of things that I absolutely loved about understanding the measurement and the relationships between things and events, and where to be and what to do and when to eat. And so think about it that way. I used to, just a little TMI, when I was a little tiny girl, like when I was 3 or 4, I used to have day of the week underwear. Tell me, everybody in the chat, if you, when you were a small child, if you had day of the week underwear.
I don't know if guys had the Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday briefs. I don't know. All the little boys probably needed it more. Just make sure you're putting on something clean every day. Takeaways. I do have takeaways for you. I really do. It's been a long and interesting but rambling conversation. Here are your takeaways. The truth is, we simultaneously have an abundance of time and a finite amount of it, which means be rational in regard to your clock and your calendar, in regard to the time and the date, the days. Address the fact of time mindfully. Use time rationally. One of the great things about having time, I say you have an abundance of time. A lifetime is enormously long. As Mae West said, you only live once, but if you live right, once is enough. One of the great things about having time is that you get to try things. So try, if you're not already, try writing on paper with a pen. Planning, brainstorming, And triage, that part at the end of the day where you revisit what you wrote and say, did the day go up the way I wanted? What am I going to do for the next day to make sure that goes the way I want? I recommend you try a morning routine and an evening routine. And these are fun to design because you get to change them as you go. I have a morning routine I use every morning. If you're following me on Twitter, you know, I get up before 6 a.m. every morning, even though I have no reason to, other than to follow these routines. And I will post my time Monday through Friday. You get to see that, along with an inspiring quote and some other thought. Try a morning routine and an evening routine. Design what your morning is going to look like and what your evening is going to look like. Try Gene Moroney's thinking on paper and other rational methods that are posted with links in the show notes. And something that grew out of listening to Yaron Brook lately, because he always talks about risk. Take chances. Here's a poll question for you. Pick one. Fear or regret? I put this up on the social networks recently. Fear, regret, pick one. Now people tried answering neither. Some people actually said both. Oh, excellent. Our producer put up a poll. I want to see it. I want to see you answer this. Fear or regret? And the reason for the question, the insight to be gained from this one is life is full of risk. And not just, risk. I might break a leg. I might hurt myself. I might be disappointed. All sorts of risks that things aren't going to go the way you want. And not just that when you won't get what you want, but you might get something else entirely. And that's true. And that means your constant choice, well, not constant, your periodic, your regular choice over and over again is you can either face up to your fears and take chances, or you can take few risks, stay in your comfort zone, and have regrets. And that is why it's good for me personally to ask myself every now and then, fear or regret? And questions like that help keep me brave, or at least braver. And maybe that's useful to you. Memento mori. Time is finite. Someday your life is going to be over. Your life is precious. Your life is precious. Your values are sacred. Your time is irreplaceable. And you are, in every way that matters, the center of the universe, which sounds enormously empowering. And it is. But it's also an enormous responsibility. Mm-hmm. And one of the best things you can do is use your time wisely, mindfully, intentionally, rationally. So I hope you will follow some of the links in the show notes, some of those resources. If you are not already a planner, if you are not already somebody who executes a morning routine, if you are not already finding these empowering works, including the book by Tim Ferriss and Cal Newport and other writers that are out there, Gene Moroney's resources in this regard are outstanding. And if you're already there, hey, we're already on the same journey, because I'm working on all of this too. But it was time to talk about time. Thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you for joining us. And right now we've got 71% who are choosing fear and 29% who are choosing regret.
Excellent.
Now, of course, the context is in terms of choosing a value that you're afraid to go after. I know there's not a lot of context there, but just think to yourself, what are you afraid of, but you would like to have?
Well, I hope we made it clear enough. I hope you will choose fear, which really means I hope you will choose bravery. I know there's a lot of guys out there who are like, I ain't afraid of nothing. You got the no fear bumper sticker. No. When you say you choose fear, what you're really doing is choosing bravery. What did Heinlein say? That a man who is fearless is not brave. He is also a fool. bravery is not lack of fear. Bravery is facing up to your fears. You can't be brave if you have no fear.
Well, I think also that if you choose whatever you're afraid of, ask yourself a series of questions, introspect on it. Why do you want this? What would it actually take to get it? What's the worst case scenario? And along with answering those questions, I think you will increase your bravery because you'll be a little bit more clear about why you value that thing that you're afraid of.
Yeah, fearless bravery is like passionless love, altruistic love. Yeah, I didn't actually feel anything about that brave thing I did. Kind of like telling your spouse, I'm not here because I want to be here. I'm here for you. Wait, what? So yes, I think that point is made. Again, join me on the journey to further refine the rationality with which we use that finite resource in our lives, our time. Could have another talk about using our energy, but I think they're almost the same thing. E equals MC squared, and maybe time equals energy squared too. But thank you for joining us. Thank you on the journey. No Clubhouse today. We are traveling this weekend and we are doing all sorts of things to get ready for that. Sorry, but there will not be a Clubhouse session. We will be back next Thursday, and I'm sure we'll have a Clubhouse at that point. I might check into Clubhouse later just to see what's going on. If you happen to see me on there, feel free to drag me into a room. But thank you for joining us. And as always, we wish you effective management of time, the rational use of that limited resource, and we wish you a successful life on Earth.